Hello students, welcome to the new session. I am Reena Thakur from St.Xavier Kindergarten and I am going to teach you SST in this new session. So students, we are first time meeting like this, means through online because of the lockdown situation. As you know that our school is at number 1 position to provide all the facilities to their students regarding their studies and education. So your study will not hamper, so our school has decided to provide online classes to all of you. So in this new session we will continue with our previous syllabus that is and previous book also, that is Integrated Social Science. And for PA1 examination we have to continue with we have to prepare 3 chapters from history portion, 3 chapters from geography portion and 2 chapters from civics portion. So let's begin with the full energy with new chapter of standard 7 that is the medieval world, that is from the history portion. Chapter number 1, medieval I think that this word is not new for you because we have already discussed about the medieval period in our previous session, means in standard 6. So as you know that the periods in history, means time in history, is divided into 3 parts. First, according to our historians, first part is ancient period, second part is medieval period. First, the ancient period, second part is the medieval period, and third part is the modern period. So from 1st century to 8th century, they consider it as an ancient period. From 8th to 18th century, that is medieval period, and from 18th to century till date, means at present, that is modern period. In this chapter, we will discuss about the medieval period. So let's begin with the chapter, that is the study of past is divided into periods. The period that lies between the ancient and the modern period, means the period between the ancient and the modern period, that is medieval period. So it is also known as the middle period. In India, the medieval period is stretched from the beginning of 8th century to the end of the 18th century, that is for nearly about 1100 years. It means that the duration of the medieval period is nearly about 1100 years. So the 8th century is generally taken as the beginning because society, economy, polity, religion and culture underwent many changes during this century. 8th century, why 8th century is considered as a starting point of the medieval period? Why is it so? It is because medieval period, in this 8th century, many important changes took place in social, economic, political and religious system. So the 8th century is the starting point of medieval period. Similarly, the 18th century witnessed still more changes, marking the end of the medieval and beginning of the modern period. It means that just like our historians considered the 8th century as a starting point. Similarly, the 18th century witnessed more important changes, means more important changes took place in 18th century. So that period, that 18th century regarded as a starting point of modern period and the ending point of medieval period. The medieval period is divided into early medieval period and later medieval period, means from 8th to 13th century there was early medieval period, and from 13th to 18th century that was late medieval period. The early medieval period stretched from the 8th to 13th century. The Palas, Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, Cholas and Rajput were the powerful ruling dynasty during this period. Means these dynasties, these rulers ruled over India during this early medieval period. And the late medieval period lasted from the 13th to 18th century. It covered the rule of Turks, the Afghans and the Mughals. Means in early medieval period, Cholas, Pratiharas, Rashtrakutas, all these dynasties ruled over India, and in later medieval period, Turks, Afghans and Mughals ruled over India. So the next topic is the many names of India. Our country is commonly referred to as a Bharat, India or Hindustan. As you know that there are few names of India: Bharat, India and Hindustan. It is however interesting to know that India was known by different names at different point of time. Means in ancient period, India was known as Bharatvarsha or Jambudvipa, and the earliest names by which our country was known in ancient time, these are the names. And India was also known as the land of people who lived along the river Sindhu. That means, you know, the Indus Valley civilization, which is also known as Harappan civilization. In from river Sindhu, the name taken from the river Sindhu, that is, it is a Sanskrit word. Sindhu was pronounced Hindu by the Persian, and it was pronounced Inde by French, and later on it was pronounced by Britishers as India. So changes, you can see the change from Sindhu to India. The way we understand Hindustan today is quite different from what was understood in the medieval times. Means now the meaning of Hindustan is totally different from the Hindustan of medieval world, medieval period. For example, according to some medieval scholars, Hindustan comprised territories that were a part of Delhi Sultanate. Means during that period, they considered the meaning of Hindustan as only the important territories which were under the Delhi Sultans, Delhi Sultanate. But after the arrival of the Mughals, means Babur, the founder of Mughal Empire, used the term Hindustan to describe the geography and natural vegetation of the subcontinent. Means now the meaning of Hindustan changed from early medieval period to the later medieval period. It was only in the 19th century during the British Raj that Hindustan came to be used synonymously in India. Means now we are using our the name of our country as a whole, India, Hindustan. The next main important topic is major historical development. Means the major important changes that took place in the medieval period, or we can say that the important features of the medieval period. Now the first most important feature of the medieval period was the coming of Muslims. coming of Muslims in India. When they arrived in India, when they came to India, which results in the growth of new culture, mixed culture, because there was a interaction between the North India and the South India, and the interaction between the Hindus and Muslims. So the new culture emerged, which was known as the Indian culture, and that was above the religious and the caste differences. The next most important feature is the Mughals gave stable government to our country. Now, can you tell me what is the meaning of stable government? Stable government means if one government or one ruler ruled for a long period of time, that is known as stable government. So the Mughal rulers, one Mughal ruler ruled for a long period of time. There were a number of Mughal rulers in our country. So there was a stability in the government during that period, and this was also true for our present system. If we have stable government in our country will develop, and if our government is not stable, then our country will not develop. Now this stable government also led to the growth of trade in our country, and because of developed trade, number of big cities and towns were established during the medieval period. Now the next feature is trade. Due to the development of trade, Indians get interacted with many new culture from the different parts of the world, and Indians also gain so many ideas from different types of cultures, and in this way the Indian culture became more rich. The fourth important feature of medieval period is the arrival of Islam. Islam means in this period Islam arrived in India. Now the fifth point is of Bhakti and Sufi sense. Means Bhakti and Sufi movements, and these sense, Bhakti and Sufi sense, spread their messages of peace and love in our country. Means their teachings were do all your work with the purity of heart and mind, help the needy people, do not hurt anyone. So all these things, all these teachings were spread in India during the medieval period. Now the sources by which we have so many information about our past. sources. There are two types of sources, the archaeological sources and literary sources. Archaeological sources means the remains of past. Remains of past means broken potteries, utensils, ornaments, jewelries, all those things which were used by our early humans. One most important thing is that for ancient period we have only the archaeological sources, because during that period written techniques were not developed. But for the medieval period and the modern period we have enough sources, archaeological sources as well as the literary sources. There are so many examples of archaeological sources are given in your book, that is which includes temples, palaces, mosques, forts, tombs, coins, inscriptions, utensils, tools, weapons, ornaments and paintings. Paintings is also considered as a most important archaeological sources, because it depicts the scene from the life of the common people. And many rulers, particularly in the South India, encouraged temple buildings. One of the most important differences between the southern part and the northern part was that the rulers from the southern part gave more emphasis on the temple building, whereas the rulers from the northern part gave more emphasis on the mosque building. Temples thus are rich source of religious and cultural history. Paintings are also more valuable. Coins are very important because they give us the dates of important political events. A book on coins titled Drarya Pariksha was written during the reign of Alauddin Khalji. Inscription was also inscriptions from South India record proclamation by king and gift to the temples and learned them. Now next is literary source. Literary source are those sources which are present in the text form, which are all those things which are in the written form are literary source, are known as the literary source. Written records of the medieval period are found in plenty. We have enough records of the medieval period, literary source of medieval period. There were most writing of this period is on paper. Literary sources include chronicles of historians, biographies, autobiographies, farmans and correspondence of the kings. Other court records such as those regarding justice and taxes and travelogues. All these things comes under the category of literary source. Now, do you know the meaning of biography, autobiography? Autobiography is the detailed story of the person's life written by that person only. But biography is the description of the life of the person written by the other person. This is the difference between the biography and autobiography. Now the next is farmans. Farmans means the proclamation by the king. And the record of taxes and travelogues. Now the next is chronicles. It is a record of rule of the king. Means king, every rulers appoint one person to maintain a record of all those things which were happened in their court, and that person is known as the chroniclers. And some of the examples are given in your book, that is Raj Tarangni by Kalhana, Tariki Firoshahi by Ziauddin Barani, Tariki Farishte by Farishta. These are the example of chronicles and written by some chroniclers. Autobiographies and biographies, you know, that is the example of autobiography is Futut Firoshahi by Firoz Shah Tughlaq, Babar Nama by Babar, Tuzuki Jahangiri by Emperor Jahangir. And the examples of biography is Prithvi Raj Raso by Chand Bardai, Humayun Nama by Gulbadan Begum, and Akbar Nama by Abul Fazl. The next is travelogues. Travelogues means the account of travelers. Means travelers also maintain a record of each and every places where they visited, and they also wrote about the life of the common people. And some of the examples are given here. Al-Biruni, who came from Central Asia, Ibn Battuta, who wrote Rihla, and Abdul Razak, who was sent by the ruler of Persia to the kingdom of Vijayanagar. So, your chapter is finished now. I hope that you will understand the concept of this chapter, and we will meet again in next video. Till then,